There's a little bit more pressure on Daryl Morey than any one of us would have expected at this point in the season. And passing the first deadline of the NBA season, Ricky Council IV's contract is officially guaranteed and he will remain on roster for the rest of the season. Two-way forward Pete Nance did not suffer the same fate, as it was announced that the Sixers had waived Pete Nance to free up a two-way roster spot. And now, for the sake of clarity, this means the Sixers have one full-time roster spot and one two-way slot open. And at the point in the season, this team needs an injection of life. So I'm going to break down what exactly this means, talk about what potentially the type of player they could be looking for, as well as highlight why I think Ricky Council, while his contract is guaranteed, his role may not be moving forward. So let's start right there with Ricky and dive right into things. So Bobby Marks tweets out that the below contracts become guaranteed at 5 p.m. Eastern. Ricky Council IV cracking this list. And as Harrison Grimm tweets out here, he says, as Bobby notes, Ricky Council IV's contract becomes guaranteed at 5 p.m. Eastern today. Recording this yesterday at the time of you guys watching this. I don't expect them to do much today, but it is worth watching with the recent emergence of Justin Edwards. And that is a great point that is brought out, as we have seen a lot more of Justin Edwards in recent games, more than I expect to be the case. Now, for the sake of clarity with that Edwards is currently slated on a two-way deal himself, and to pull up those exactly to the Sixers, it is Jeff Doughton and Justin Edwards, and Ricky is on the standardized NBA full-scale deal. Now, let's not forget what led up to those events there, as Ricky was on a two-way contract for just about all of last season, basically found a way to outperform that and prove that he meant something to this Sixers team. That victory over the Spurs continually stands out in my head as a moment where something sparked, okay, they have something in Ricky Council IV here. There is a skill set they could provide to this team, and then ultimately on the final day of the season, or right leading up to it, the Sixers did hand him a standard contract, which made him eligible for the playoffs, and Nick Nurse, of course, rewarded Ricky Council by playing him a grand total of 0 minutes in the playoffs, and by the way, I think it would be useful in that Knicks series. But nonetheless, to continue on, I do want to give a little bit of a reminder for what the two-way contract is, because I do think this will be the priority for the Sixers team. I think this is the market that they will attack first, and I mean that for a couple different reasons. So for starters, I want to start with what exactly is a two-way contract, and what that is here is who is eligible. Only players who have had fewer than 4 years of experience in the NBA can sign a two-way contract. For the sake of these contracts, experience means playing a game in the NBA. So even if a player has only played in 4 games in their career, if each of those 4 games occurred in different seasons, they're ineligible for a two-way contract. Additionally, players are limited to 2 years on a two-way contract with the same team. When can a two-way contract play? Players on two-way contracts are eligible in 50 of their team's 82 games. When the contracts were initially introduced, players were limited to 45 days with the team, which included practice and travel days. The change to 50 games has greatly benefited the team and players. When not playing, two-way contracts can still practice with the team, travel with the team, and sit on the bench during games as an inactive member of the team. They also can spend time on the team's G League affiliate. This article was written by a Warriors site, so they mentioned the Santa Cruz Warriors, but for the Sixers, it is the Delaware Blue Coats there. And by the way, 10 out of 10 recommend popping down to Delaware if you guys have an opportunity. Have a nice, good, real nice chance to watch some of these guys up close and get a better view of their game. Awesome arena, cool spot. People there are incredibly nice. But nonetheless, to talk about some of the players that do play there, this is an opportunity for the Sixers team. This is your chance to think outside the box. And I kind of went all over the place trying to come up with some names to spitball. I ultimately don't have a ton that I'm going to lean on here, but I did want to carve out the archetype of player that I do think the Sixers should target. For starters, I do think it should be a guard. And once again, to kind of give a take on who the two-way slots are, it is Jeff Doughton Jr. and Justin Edwards. So coming from two opposite ends of the spectrum here, Doughton Jr., about as experienced of a two-way contract guy as you can find. That he is 27 years old. He's a guy who's been around the league quite a bit, bounced out, obviously has played under Nick Nurse just about the entirety of his career. And then there's Justin Edwards, who is an undrafted free agent in the most recent draft, a guy who went to Kentucky, was a top-ranked prospect where things did not fully pan out in college. And we're starting to see the effects of him putting the pieces together in his game. And why I wanted to harp on Justin Edwards specifically here is I do think he will be taking Ricky Council's minutes in the going games moving forward, basically. Ricky will have his opportunities. He's not going to be a zero on this Sixers team, but I think Justin Edwards is everything that Nick Nurse doesn't like about Ricky Council IV. And what I mean by that is when comparing them as players, Ricky Council IV is as random as you will get. That he's going to try stuff, he's going to compete, he's going to bring energy, but he's also going to do way too much out there on the floor constantly. I mean, we've seen this dude miss like multiple step back 35-footers this year, which respectfully to Ricky Council IV, you just have no business taking that shot at the NBA level at this point in your career. Those kind of step back end of shot clock opportunities are reserved for the big dogs, and Ricky Council does not quite make that list. Now, I respect the guts that he has, the stones that he has to take that, the willingness, and the effort is never lacking with Ricky, but he also does lack in some of the basic basketball skills that are incredibly important. And most glaring to me is he basically has no knowledge of defensive rotations. It feels like every time I see him on the floor that he does miss a spot where he's supposed to rotate, or a roll man he's supposed to tag that he doesn't do. He ends up getting to the rim. There's little things like that that I guarantee drive Nick Nurse crazy. Now bring in Justin Edwards. He is everything that Ricky Council IV isn't. He's not going to do too much. What he is he's going to spot up, take catch and shoot threes, play really good defense, and play within the constructs of a team. That is an excellent just archetype of player, and frankly, a perfect guy in the system the Sixers are trying to build with these rangy, athletic wings. That is who Justin Edwards is, and he's not this, I guess, physical specimen or overpowering a guy. Like, I've stood next to him, have spoken to him. Very nice guy, very even keel, kind of shy, to be perfectly honest, but he's not a guy that you look and say he's definitely in the NBA. But what he is a young kid growing into his own shoes and has shown a lot of confidence in recent games. I do think it is telling that we've seen multiple games now where he's getting first quarter minutes. I understand there have been injuries. The Sixers have been shorthanded, but that still does tell the story for me. So you have Justin Edwards on the 1-2-way contract, which does check the box of sort of that potential. Then you have Jeff Doughton, who's a guy who more or less is sort of the excuse to have an additional role player, although Nick Nurse really has not used him as such. We've seen very little Jeff Doughton this year, and then you do have that third available slot. So with that third available slot, the Sixers need to bring in an impact player. I know that is not what we're accustomed to for two-way slots, but why I think Daryl Morey will attack this direction is, what are the cap implications of a two-way contract? There are none. There are no cap implications for two-way contracts. Only the 15 players on standard contracts count against the team's salary and tax. While the team still has to pay two-way contracts, their salary cap will stay the same. Can two-way contracts be converted? Yes. Players on two-way contracts can be converted to regular contracts, which the Warriors have done regularly. Again, this was from a Warriors site. The team might choose to do this to sign a player long-term before they hit free agency, or to make them eligible for the postseason roster. So this is why I think Daryl will attack this way. When we speak about the open roster spot on the standard 15-man slot, part of that is trade flexibility, that you want to be able to do trade two players, bring in three, trade one player, bring in two, something like that. And particularly as the Sixers are a first apron team, they cannot take in more money than they send out. So that's going to be especially valuable when factoring that in. But the other part of it is just keeping the salary cap flexibility and staying under that second apron, which is a huge priority for this Sixers team. And in general, I know the immediate knee-jerk reaction is to critique a team and a franchise for not being willing to spend the cash. But in this specific situation, and what we're seeing league-wide across the NBA, is there are some disadvantages that you're put in when you start spending a certain amount of money. Restrictions on trades, draft picks potentially being stripped in the future, things like that teams are going to have to face. And I guarantee you the effects of this are really going to start to be seen, especially this offseason and moving forward beyond. I hate the CBA that is signed, but nonetheless, this is what every team has to work with, and everybody playing by the same rules there. But when putting that all in mind, the two-way contract is a little bit of a cheat code to it. That we've seen the Sixers try to find these loopholes before, and I think this is one that has not been attacked enough by teams. So I would love to see them get a player who can somehow make an impact. Where my mind is for that is either a guy in the G League who hasn't gotten a real chance yet. Most of the top talents are already on two-way deals. Davison was a guy that I really looked into. He's in the Celtics organization, went to Alabama, guy that I loved watching in college, and I do believe has an NBA future. He's unfortunately on a two-way. The other place where my mind went was overseas. How many guys over there are itching for an NBA chance in the same way that Gershon Yabusele is? I know not all of these guys translate, but I do think there's a world where you can swing for the fences, sign a guy that wants an NBA opportunity, give him a two-way contract, and give him a chance to earn a spot in this rotation. If it does not work out, you simply cut ties, move on to the next, and keep it rolling from there, and he can head back overseas if that's what he desires to do. But what if it does? What if you can find a way to scrape and add an additional role player? I would love for Daryl Morey to attack in that specific market and find a guy that is more ready for NBA minutes than a guy like Justin Edwards that we know to be. Although, shout out to Justin for being ahead of the curve, and I do think that he is going to play a role in the Sixers team moving forward. Nothing crazy. He's not the next superstar that this team has at this current moment, but I do think that he will be a fairly regular rotation player, particularly if these injuries continue. So for this Sixers team, we have a little bit of hope for some roster movement in the coming future. Best wishes to Pete Nance there, a guy that impressed me more than he did than his days at North Carolina. I'll say that. He was not a guy who I was overly optimistic when he was added to this team, but they did need another front court piece at that time, and it was worth taking a chance on. Very nice guy, a guy who competed, played hard, and I do see the vision a little bit more than I did when he first got here. So hopefully he lands on his feet and gets an NBA opportunity somewhere else, but hopefully the Sixers can bring in somebody a little bit more impactful to fill that third slot. So let me know what you guys think, and would love to hear any names that you guys have in the comments. I will respond to any of those if you want to spitball some at me, or their eligibility, or if it would fit for this team, whatever you got in mind. So let them rip below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video, and I'll be back with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.